Hi, I'm Jennifer Devine, and this is the Successfou podcast. Successfou is a podcast where we interview people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, and we get their success story. Not just the glorified success story, we get who they are, how they got to where they are, the steps along the way, the opposition that they had to face and how they overcame it, and their unique template of success. I'm thrilled to welcome Jennie Becker to the Successfou podcast. Jennie is the founder, creator, and host of Sliding Doors podcast. With her unique ability to uncover the pivotal moments that change people's lives, Jennie has brought us countless inspiring stories through her 105 episodes. She started her journey in fashion and event planning, and 3 years ago created her first podcast with just a microphone over a Zoom call. Jennie's podcast has grown into the go-to for listeners who want to explore the what-ifs of life. Let's dive into her incredible journey and discover what's behind the Sliding Doors podcast. So please join me as I welcome Jennie Becker. Welcome, Jennie. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, of course. So Jennie is the producer, the publisher, the host, the booking agent
Yes.
for the Sliding Doors podcast. And she's been doing it for 3 years.
Yes.
I want to bring everyone up to Sliding Doors, but I want to start with when you were 10, you wanted to be in fashion or a pop star.
Yes.
When you were 15, you wanted to be a fashion show producer.
Yes.
And then you went to Manchester High School and you did your A-levels there.
Yeah.
And then you went on to University of Birmingham City University, where you studied fashion, business, and you did really well.
Yes.
And so you went into the world and you worked in media and fashion.
Yes.
Okay, sum that up for me, and then I want to get on to the podcast.
It's nice when you hear it all like that. So I was always a very creative child. I loved art. I'd say I was always in the middle of the class, so I was never the cleverest. I was never, not clever, but I was always somewhere in the middle, and art was always what I loved. I loved drawing, creating things. And then when I went to secondary school, I actually realised I was quite good at maths as well. But my dream was, I still have this book at home where I used to just draw dresses and really just wanted to create. I just wanted to create evening wear or bridal dresses. Like I loved big dresses. But when I kind of realised that I was good at maths as well, and I loved kind of the logic behind maths, I just then kind of thought, well, what can I do that marries the two? My school wanted to push me into being an architect, which I did not want to do because I wanted to be more creative. And my mum has a background and she works in the music industry and also is like the most amazing person at putting events together. So events was always something that intrigued me. And I thought, how do you combine fashion and events? And that's kind of what happened. And I actually applied to go to London College of Fashion and got in, but it was to do with the school fees in the year, and I wanted to defer a year and they wouldn't let me defer, and if I deferred I'd have to pay more money. So I ended up going to my last choice of uni, but it ended up being the best place ever to go. I met amazing people and I ended up getting a first in my degree. So
which is fashion or business?
Fashion and business. So it was it was one course together. And it was right at the start when there weren't really many fashion and business courses. There'd been fashion design for a long time, but fashion and business, I learned everything, how to be a buyer, a merchandiser, events. You had a bit of design in there, but you also learned the business side of stuff, which was also really interesting to me. So that's kind of how it happened.
What was your first job out of uni?
So my first job out of uni, so I took the summer off after uni and we went to Thailand, like with the girls, as you do, but I was applying for so many jobs. I remember I really wanted to work for Arcadia, who used to own Topshop and stuff. They all had graduate schemes. I applied for so many jobs that summer, and I remember I got a call from a recruiter towards the end of the summer, and they didn't tell me who the job was for, but they said it's an assistant merchandising role. Are you interested? I was like, yes. And found out it was for Kurt Geiger, the shoe brand. And it's a really interesting story, actually. So I went to the interview and you had to do a maths test, like in the first instance. And it was so hard. I don't think you weren't allowed a calculator or either way. I totally botched up this maths test, but went into the interview afterwards. And I must have just been really calm because I thought I've definitely not got this job because I've messed my test up. And for some reason, they really liked me. And I think that was on a Thursday. On the Friday, I got offered the job and literally moved to London on the Monday. I was living in Manchester at home, so it happened so quickly. And when I asked them about it, they said they never even marked my maths test because they liked me so much. And it's always been such a lesson to me that, yes, it's about the skills that you have and, getting things right, but also presenting yourself and being your authentic self can really get you far. So yeah, I moved to London within like a weekend and I've been here now for 15 years.
And fast forward, take me through, so you work for Kurt Geiger, which I love their recent vegan shoe line, by the way.
Yep.
Maybe someday they'll sponsor me.
Yeah, maybe. You never know. Put it out there.
So after Kurt Geiger, you went where?
So after Kurt Geiger, I worked in merchandising, which was very maths orientated, which I loved, but it got to a stage after a year and a half where I needed more creativity. And I moved to a job where I worked for a manufacturer. It was an awful job, really didn't enjoy that. And then one night I saw that my dream job was online, which was to work for the British Fashion Council. I think there was like a day left for the entries for this position, and it was to be a sponsorship assistant. Now, I'd not done sponsorship before, but I just wanted to work at the British Fashion Council. And I applied, I got a first round interview, and this is actually one of my sliding doors moments, as I was leaving my flat, I was like, I'm going to take my dissertation with me that I'd done at university just in case. My dissertation was a high street fashion week. So I'd kind of taken everything London Fashion Week did and made it into a high street event. I went to the interview, and as we're ending the interview, I was like, I just want to show you my dissertation. And I kind of put a bookmark where the sponsorship section was. And she was like, oh my God, I've got to go and show this to the CEO. And she just walks out the room, takes my dissertation. And I swear I only got that job because I took my dissertation very last minute, because it made me stand out from everybody else. Like, so many people applied for that role. And that role changed everything for me. I worked in sponsorship for about a year and a half. For me, that is just like, I really don't think I would have got the job if I hadn't have taken it with me.
Oh, they probably liked you though. You are likable.
True, yeah. But I think it really showed because sponsorship is obviously to be a sponsorship assistant, you've never done sponsorship before, but it showed that I had the commercial brain to think about sponsorship because I'd done it in my dissertation. And I think them seeing that really made me stand out from other people. So yeah, it was probably a mixture, but I definitely believe that was like a big part of me getting the role.
And you were there for a while?
I was there for 5 years. So I started looking after sponsors for London Fashion Week, like Mercedes-Benz, American Express, Vodafone. Had the time of my life. I went to every fashion week.
What was that role? Just for anyone listening and watching who are like, wait, that sounds like a cool role.
Yeah.
What was that role? What did you do?
So that role was, some of it was new business. So some of it was looking or kind of going through sponsors that could sponsor London Fashion Week. I remember when I got my first sponsor on board and they paid like £10,000, which to me seemed like so much money, but in the world of sponsorship, it's little, but it was amazing. But then I also looked after existing sponsors. So for example, American Express would sponsor London Fashion Week. I would be their kind of sponsorship manager, and they would have activations that they would do throughout Fashion Week. For example, they'd bring people and sit on the front row of shows. They'd have they might do a pop-up. There's loads of things that they did, and I kind of looked after that client relationship. But during Fashion Week, I had to meet with loads of new prospective sponsors and take them to shows and take them around the Fashion Week. So that to me was like an unbelievable dream. You worked about 15 days without straight. It was really long hours, really hardcore. But I was like living my dream. Like, I'd been watching The Hills when I was younger, like the TV show, and all I wanted to do was be a fashion show producer and work at Fashion Week. And I was living this dream. And when I'd been there for about 2 years, an opportunity came up to be an events manager. And I knew that I could do it, but I'd obviously not really shown event planning skills at the British Fashion Council before, although you'd basically have to work in events when you work in sponsorship. And I interviewed for that role and got it. And that was just it for me. I I absolutely loved it. I planned events for London Fashion Week, at Downing Street, all different places. But my biggest thing was I organised the British Fashion Awards, which was my absolute
So you led
baby.
that?
Yeah.
What year did you do that?
What year did I do it? God, I really can't remember. It's so long ago now. So I did it when we moved to the Coliseum. So it kind of took a step up. It was at the Savoy Hotel, at the Savoy Theatre, and it took a step up to the Coliseum, and I did it there for 3 years. And I mean, it takes over your life, but I just absolutely loved it. And it was amazing every year to be able to progress what I'd learned the year before and make it better and just learn so much. And yeah, it was like this time of year would be an absolute, I wouldn't even be able to come and have a coffee with a friend because I'd just be working. But
did it pay well? Did either of those two jobs, were they well-paying jobs for anyone watching who's like, oh, I could do that as a career? I've never heard of that before.
I mean, when I started, no. I mean, working in fashion, you did not get paid a lot. I mean, I was on under 20 grand. I had to babysit. I did so many other things so that I could live in London. I think with fashion, I mean, it has changed, and I know it's better now, especially with work experience now. You know, you have to get paid for what you do, but you have to love it. You don't go in it for the money. Like, you definitely need to get, you know, paid for what you do. And I think that the industry is definitely getting better at recognizing that. But it's about loving what you do, and it's about that creativity process. And to be honest, I didn't really earn that much money in that time.
Were there perks? Did you get like discounts at fashion houses? And
oh gosh, I wish. And
did
even
you get
if
like an Oxford Street pass?
even if you did get the discounts, you didn't have enough money to
buy anything.
Yes, I'd be walking around Fashion Week wearing like H&M and Primark because you didn't have any money. Like, you literally were there for the love of what you were doing. But there were so many perks. I mean, not only did I meet the most amazing people in that job, some of who I'm still best friends with now, but I got to work with the biggest sponsors around. I got to work with every magazine publication. I met so many famous people. You'd get so much product left over from goodie bags, and you know, and it taught me so much. Like, definitely from a commercial perspective of how these things work, but from an events perspective, I mean, you can't learn anywhere better than that. So and I got to travel a lot. I got to go to LA, I got to go to New York and put events on there. I did an event in Chateau Marmont. Like, I was there for a week.
Wow.
We took over all the bunk, like things like that.
And they put you up there, so you got to stay at Chateau Marmont.
No, we stayed at a really lovely hotel in Beverly Hills, which was still lovely. But you know, the fact that I've done events at these amazing places, you know, at the time I don't think you realize how big they are. But when I look back, it was just a glorious time in my life.
So it also must have helped you, the sponsorship side of things.
Yes.
Did it help prepare you for calling up people and saying, hey, will you come on my Sliding Doors podcast?
It helped me for everything. I mean, my boss was called Jennie Becker, and he was a brilliant mentor. I think for my first 3 months, I just listened in every meeting. But it really taught me how, you know, when you're pitching to get money from somebody or anything from someone, what are you offering them? And what I loved is that we were always quite different to New York. New York was a very commercial fashion week, whereas London was more about the creativity. So when we worked with sponsors, it wasn't like, we'll pay you £1 million, we just want to put a car in your show space. We weren't about that. We had to work with brands that had a synergy with what we were doing and where we could really collaborate and do something together that made sense. So I think it really taught me that, you know, sometimes it isn't just about how much money or the, you know, the big shiny things that people can give you. Things have to fit right with your brand. But yeah, it definitely taught me a lot about how to work with clients and work with different people. And I think it was a really good grounding for kind of everything else that I've done.
Was it there that you came up with the Sliding Doors idea? Because you came up with Sliding Doors, was it in COVID or right after COVID?
Right after COVID, no, fast forward a long time after that. So after I worked at the British Fashion Council, I worked at Stella McCartney for 3 months.
That's right, I read that.
And that was my absolute dream job to get. That couldn't have been when I got it.
What did you do for her?
So I was global events manager. But I left after 3 months because it wasn't the right culture fit for me. I'd never quit anything in my life, and it was a really hard time. I didn't know whether to quit. I didn't know how I would cope without a job, but I had to.
So for like your mental health.
Yes.
Got it.
And it was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
I then ended up working for a brand called LTK, which are in the fashion industry. So they are the influencer affiliate
What does it stand for? I was Googling that.
Like to know it. So basically, whenever an influencer puts an outfit online and you click to buy, they built the whole ecosystem of how influencers can basically make money. It's an amazing company. It's gone $1 billion since I've left. And that was amazing because I joined at such a great time and I was international events manager there. And because every event had to be Instagrammable, I just could be as creative as I wanted to be. I got to build the events team there and I got to travel the world. And it was just, after having such a bad experience, I remember I used to say like it's made me smile again. Like it really I met brilliant people. I got to go to Australia. I traveled loads and it was a brilliant job from an events perspective. And that's also where I learned how to measure success of events. So events isn't just about putting on something that's shiny and glittery. It's what is the return on investment that you're going to get. I decided I basically wanted to leave the fashion industry. I was a bit done.
So was that LTK, you were like, all right, I'm burnt out now, I've done this.
After LTK, yes. I kind of just wanted to do events that that could build a bit more of a community and had a bit more, that I had a bit more autonomy to kind of make a slightly more strategic standpoint, but also make a difference to people. And WeWork was always the next dream for me. And after 9 months of interviews and about 11 interviews, I got the job there. And it was when I was at WeWork that the whole sliding doors thing came to fruition.
So tell everyone what WeWork is.
So WeWork is a co-working space, and I mean, I'm sure you've heard and seen the documentaries and seen out there, but it was one of the first co-working spaces globally, and it's been through a very turbulent time, but ultimately, you know, what WeWork created has led the industry. I mean, co-working is amazing and it's massive and it's so needed in what we do today. And I joined the UK and Ireland team and built the events team there. So before I started, every building was doing whatever event they wanted to do, and there was no structure or framework behind it. So I came in and there were 60 buildings that we looked after, and basically just figured out a whole framework of how can we use events to build and keep our community strong, but in a strategic way, in a way that we're spending our money smartly and we're getting return on investment for the events that we're doing. So
what kind of events would a corporate hot desking company?
Yeah, so it's really, really good question. We put on activities and experiences every single day for our members. So WeWork was very much about building a community. So when you go there as a member, we wanted to provide, you know, social experiences for people that were members there. I think sometimes the word networking is, you don't just want to put a networking event on. We'd put on a candle making class at lunchtime and you end up sitting next to someone and get talking, and that's how you'd strike up a conversation. We had breakfasts, lunches, but then we did some really big cool stuff where we do like rooftop yoga classes. We'd collaborate with brands like Space NK and do workshops, and you know, there's loads of kind of the wellness side of stuff, but we do some big stuff as well. And basically it was about creating a community. So yes, there are big corporate companies that are there, but there are some people that are there for themselves, doing a business by themselves, and it's about creating this holistic workspace where you can really, you know, work isn't just about sitting at a desk for 24 hours a day or even 12 hours a day. So yes, it was a really brilliant job, and what we got to create there was amazing.
Right. And did they, were you with them during COVID?
Yes, I was with them during COVID. We literally, no one in my team got furloughed. I managed to keep my whole team, and we took everything digital. So this is actually when the sliding doors thing started, because I had moderated before on panels and really, really enjoyed it. I always kind of really wanted to interview more and be an interviewer. And during COVID, when all of our events went online, I got the opportunity to interview some really great people like Dame Kelly Holmes and Elizabeth Day. And I just realised how much I loved interviewing. And I think that's what really got that spark in me to think, like, how can I progress and do this more?
For WeWork, how did that come up that you were interviewing those people?
Because me and the team were putting on the digital events, and
so it was just inspiring stories.
Yeah, and we interviewed people and kind of, inspiring stories from people. And it just so happened that, like, I enjoyed doing it. I'm free for the company rather than paying for someone else to do it. So that kind of is how that snowballed. And I got the opportunity to do lots of interviewing and presenting at WeWork, which really, again, just kind of cemented how much I love doing it. Always loved public speaking. I think at university, which I've always been so thankful for, everything I did had to be a presentation. So I got very used to being comfortable with public speaking quite young. And whenever I used to do, I remember when I used to do presentations at LTK, and everyone used to say like, oh, you're really good at public speaking. And I was like, am I? I just enjoy doing it. But some people really hate it. And I think I just realized that it's something that I enjoy to do. And I think that's quite unique. So I just wanted to explore that more. And that's basically how Sliding Doors happened.
No, you are really good at it. At the International Women's Podcasting Festival, where I saw you first.
Yes,
I thought, God, she's a natural. Like, you were so comfortable.
I love that so much. Like, I did not get nervous because I just enjoyed doing it, which I know is really weird.
Yeah,
but I think it's just ingrained in me.
Fantastic. If you could bottle and sell it, you'd be a billionaire.
Yeah, it's so true.
That's great. So, so it was there that you had the Sliding Doors moment, and it must have been a really impactful movie for you at 12 or however early adolescence
11, 12,
when it came out,
yeah.
that you were intrigued, right, about it. So, so you started Sliding Doors. You ended up interviewing the whole cast pretty much, except for Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes.
Gwyneth.
Yes. Nearly.
Eventually, right?
Yeah, one day.
And then you started, you got to your 100th episode. You're on your 103rd episode now of Sliding Doors?
Yeah. I think today was 105 I released today, which,
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Especially in 3 years.
Thank you.
What practical steps did you take in the early days to grow your audience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I literally started the podcast from nothing. I was sat on my couch and again remembered the film that I loved. And I thought if I start a podcast, I always want to do it with something that feels authentic to me and something that I'm really interested and curious about. The film came to mind and no one was really doing it, which I was very shocked about. And so, I got an Instagram handle, Sliding Doors Pod, and I decided to ask 5 people that I knew to come on the show. And I was like, if they say yes, I'm doing it. And they all said yes. It was like my old CEO. It was a friend's sister who was a journalist. Like I literally just, as someone that I knew that had written a book. And it kind of all started from there. And to be honest, you just have to muddle through with all of it. Like I bought a microphone. This was back in the day where I used Zoom to do my recordings.
Yeah,
I don't
what was
use
your
Zoom.
first podcast setup? Because I did listen to it and I loved it. And your sound was great. And I gathered it was over the internet, maybe, or did you
so they were all over the internet. But like some of my old recordings, like their internet wasn't great, and one of them we had to re-record it because his Wi-Fi kept dropping. And I used to prep so much. I remember sitting there and getting so nervous. But it really is something that you just have to keep doing, and you improve every single time. The programmings and stuff that I use now are way better than what I used at the beginning. But
what did you start off with back in the early days?
I started off with Zoom. I had a really good microphone.
Call.
So I got a really good mic, which I think really helped because it made me sound professional.
What did you start with?
The Rode Podcaster.
The Rode Podcaster.
Yeah, started with the Rode Podcaster. And Zoom was brilliant, but the Wi-Fi and internet issues, if someone's Wi-Fi wasn't good, you'd had it. But it was free for me to use and it worked really well at the time that I needed it for. And then I think it was when I did Sliding Doors 25, I decided to start looking into more professional programming, and I looked into Riverside, which is just so much better in terms of the quality of the audio that you get, quality of video that you get. And as a tool, it's just a lot easier to work with. And I always thought, I don't want to pay money to do that when I've got Zoom. But actually, it really makes a difference. And I think with everything with the podcast, it's just been about learning and growing as I can. I mean, I put a lot of pressure on myself to want to get to certain places. And a lot of the time along the way, I haven't got there. I've just continued to believe in the show. But also, for me, the reason why I do Sliding Doors is because I love listening to people's sliding doors moments. And I love thinking about the what if. And what I love is that every time something's gone wrong or it hasn't gone the way I want it to, every time I interview somebody and I get that feeling after, I realize why I'm doing it.
Opposition, because I know you don't just get successful without any opposition.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people try to do what you do and then they stop or they quit or they get someone telling them, oh, that was okay or whatever, right? You get comments or you get a voice in your head, or sometimes it's friends and family giving you your feedback. Can you share any specific moments when you faced significant doubt or criticism, and how did you overcome it?
That's a really good question. I think for me, it's always been I'm my biggest critic. And I think because I started off and I still really like, I'm not a celebrity. Nobody I'm not in the public eye. So for me, I was always up against all these bigger podcasts. And I think most of the time I just used to focus on all the things that I hadn't done. I haven't got to this amount of downloads. I haven't got these guests on. I haven't got this amount of followers on my Instagram. And on a daily basis, I'd be like this. And then my sister used to always go mad at me because I'd, bring out an episode and the episode was really good, but I'd get really annoyed because the person that was on it hadn't promoted it. And then I get so annoyed about it and I'd get so upset and I'd let it really fester. And same with people saying no, like, even, the story about Gwyneth. Gwyneth was meant to come on the podcast. She was booked in my diary for 3 months. And then a couple of weeks before, she pulled out. And I cried. I woke up in the morning, read that email and cried. Feels ridiculous now. But, and I felt like everything happens to me. This isn't meant for me. All the good things that I think are going to happen with the show never happen. And I think it's more the expectation I put on myself. But what it really has taught me is to have such a thick skin. And I spoke about this in that talk is knowing that a no now isn't a no forever. Or, if something isn't happening now, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future. I have to believe in timing. I have to believe in the process. And, in the past couple of months, that's really come to light for me. Like certain things have happened that I never thought would have happened. And it's just made me realize that going through all those stages of so many people start podcasts and don't continue them because you don't see results in the first 3 to 6 months, but you've got to keep going with it because unless you're someone famous, you're not going to see the results. But if you keep going and it's really a passion of yours, your organic growth will grow and things will happen for you. You just have to wait for it.
Yeah, and just stay passionate.
Yeah, stay passionate, keep hustling, and realize one thing I do a lot is when something goes wrong or not the way I wanted it to, I allow myself to wallow. So I give myself a day. So let's say, for example, I've been waiting to hear from a dream guest and they message me that day and they say that they can't come on the show. I'll allow myself to be like, today is just a day of wallow. I'm just not going to I'm going to let myself be upset, feel like everything's rubbish, feel like I'm rubbish, feel like the podcast's rubbish. And then tomorrow, I'm going to take all that negative energy and do something positive with it. So that's kind of my mantra.
So you create a time window where you're going to let yourself delve in a little bit, lean into the sadness about it, if you will. And then you're going to, the clock strikes 7 a.m. tomorrow morning or whenever you wake up. And that's really great advice. I always learned in early sales that, there are no no's. It's just not now.
Yes, 100%. It's happened to me with so many people and so many things. And so many times when things haven't happened, I've then had the energy that's fueled me to be like, well, what can I make happen? And brilliant things have happened. So it is just about keeping on going. But you've got to have an authentic love for what you're doing in order to kind of keep
it has to be your authentic sort of love and passion, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully with Successfou, I'll never get tired of it. That's great advice. So I kind of touched on this already, but you said in an interview with Andrea McLean's podcast, do you remember that one?
Yes.
I've always thought with the good and the bad, there's a reason for it. When it's bad, what do you tell yourself about the reason? Is it a lesson? There's something to be learned in this, or?
I used to be the person that walks down the street and if it's raining and windy and it's all coming at me, I think this happens to me. This always happens to me, even though every other person walking down the street is going through the same thing. But I'd always have this thing that it is me and the no's are me. And when bad things happen, it's because it's me. And I've just learned so much to get rid of that narrative in my head. And as I say, there are some times where I feel like it is me, and my confidence is really low, and I think it's never going to happen for me, and that's kind of going to be it. But I've really learned that I do really believe that everything happens for a reason. And I think that, really bad things happen to people in our lives. And I don't think we can sit here and say, everything that happens is going to be good, but you've got to figure out what the lesson is from something, or realize that, okay, if it hasn't happened for a reason, whether that's something that you'll realize now, in the future, 10 years down the line. And I think for me, the reason why I love sliding doors is because when you can connect the dots from previous things that have happened, you can then have belief that things are going to work out in the future. So that's why I love connecting the dots of people's lives and figuring out the moments of where things happened, because, you realize that one day when you went to the coffee shop and met that person, everything changed for you, which gives you belief in the future to know that coffee shop moment will happen again for something else. And it's realizing that sometimes it isn't the big things that, are the things that are going to be good or bad in your life. It can be small things. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I've learned that. But I've also learned that you can create your own luck. I think that, I would love a radio show one day, but I'm not going to sit at home when someone's going to knock on my door and be like, "Hi, Jenny, here's your radio show." So, I started my podcast because I love interviewing, and that's my platform to show what I can do. And I believe everything that's happened to me with the podcast, a lot of it is luck, but a lot of it is because I've prepared myself to get the luck, and I was ready to receive the luck when it happened. So I do think that you can make your own luck with a lot of things that you do.
How, when you say luck and you create your own luck, is it a matter of planning and preparation? So luck equals planning and preparation, or?
I think yes and no. I think yes, because I think when you're more open to opportunities and situations, they gravitate more towards you. But I also think that luck can come along, but if you're not ready to receive it, you won't even notice it. So if you're not in the position where you've, prepared yourself for your, your dream job might come around, or your dream man. But if you're not ready for that dream man, then it's not going to work. So it's knowing that you're always trying to make yourself prepared for the opportunities that come along. So for me, I'm always trying to be the best interviewer I can be, because who knows, hopefully one day something will happen, or you never know. So it's about, and that's me, I'm doing that. I'm interviewing people every single week to make sure that I'm trying to be the best interviewer I can be. But I still believe that the luck does come along to kind of, I don't know, to surprise you and bring that spark into your life.
I definitely believe in luck, but I think it's, I think you deserve it. And what makes you feel like you deserve it is being a good person,
Yes.
planning, preparation.
Definitely.
Like, wait, you deserve
Yeah.
for good things to happen. You're a
Yeah.
good person, right?
Definitely.
So do you believe in manifestation at all? Do you sort of think and pre-meditate what something might look like or feel like, and then try to draw it closer?
Yeah, I do.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Devine, and you're listening to the Successfou podcast. Thank you for joining us. I hope you're liking the show. If you are, can you please help us out by letting us know? It's really simple. All you have to do is hit the like button. You're welcome to comment. We read every comment. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and you won't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show.
And I always have had visions. Like, I'm a very visual thinker. Yeah. I kind of always know where I want things to go or how I want them to be. I try really hard to manifest. Like, I definitely, with my job at WeWork, I wrote on a piece of paper the role I wanted to be and had it on my door and used to look at it every day, and then it happened and I was like, wow, it worked. But I've also had things where I've manifested them and they haven't happened, and then I've got to believe that it haven't happened yet. Exactly. But what I do believe in is energy. So for me, manifestation and kind of visualization is all about the energy I put out there. So, saying things about myself and positioning myself in a certain way, the more I say that and the more I put that out there, the more then that's going to come back to me. So I really do believe in that. I believe in having goals. Every year I sit down in January, write my goals and visions for the year, and I'll write my, I call them my I can't remember what I call them. I call them, you know, they're never going to happen goals type things, like the big things, the big dreams, i.e. like having a TV show or something random or going on Strictly Come Dancing as a contestant, where the likelihood is that it's not going to happen, but it's a good focus for me, because I think sometimes it's just good to have a focus in the back of your mind, because it helps you navigate where you want to go. But I definitely believe in energy. I think for so long, I don't think my energy matched where I wanted to go and wanted to be. And that's about taking care of yourself and looking after yourself and working on yourself and being the most content version of yourself, I then think helps the things come your way that you want.
I love you speaking about energy, and I like that the world is speaking about energy now.
Yeah.
There's famous people like Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know him, but you know, your thoughts are real and they're chemical and they create a physical situation.
Yeah, they do.
So when you speak about energy, is it that? It's like the thoughts you think and what you're putting out there, creating possibility, saying what you want and getting it out there.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm learning how to do that more. And I think it's sometimes riding the wave of like good things that happen to you and just putting yourself out there more. When I think of energy, I remember I used to do this thing at work a while ago where I'd go in, and if I kind of went in one day and I was just having a bit of a, you know, just like a busy day, and you walk in, you grab your coffee and you sit at your desk. But if I walked in and I smiled and kind of looked at a few people, you'd spark up conversation, and then their energy would be picked up. And I was like, wow, like I have the power to like bring my energy to something that is going to help other people. And I think that's what I've learned a lot more is that one smile, or that one, I don't know, that one email to someone, or that one, you know, letting someone go on the road, like, even though people never say thank you.
Yeah.
Literally, it drives me mad. But even that one little thing, like, you might just make someone's day. And, you know, we talk a lot about kindness at the moment and stuff. And I think that it's just really important. I think you realize, again, as you said, you realize how much your energy not only helps other people, but helps you and your mind.
Yeah.
You know, we can't always be positive, but your mind is basically what feeds your narrative. So if you're telling yourself negative things all the time, you're going to start to believe them. So I try really, really hard. I think I'm definitely someone that talks a good game, and I don't necessarily often, you know, take my own advice, but I'm really trying to do that now.
That's fantastic. It's like thoughts create your feelings create your actions.
Exactly.
So if you just stand guard at the doorway of our mind, and letting the thoughts we want to have come in, then
totally,
hopefully everything just kind of goes.
Yeah.
Like, but it is a discipline, isn't it? It's like you have to be so disciplined, because it's not always the world responding to you. It's sometimes just our own doubt.
Oh yeah.
Day.
Or I could just be making a coffee and I'm really happy, and then a thought comes into my head. The next second later, I'm like in a really bad mood and I'm feeling rubbish, and nothing has changed in the world.
Yeah.
I've just thought of something in my head, and that's where I can catch those things now and be really good at recognizing it. I think when you can recognize those things, it's easier to stop them going further. And I've had therapy, I have a life coach. Like, it's taken a long time for me to get to this type of stage. But it's really important, really important.
Oh, that's so good that you invest in yourself in that way. Yes. This was so good. So I follow you on LinkedIn, of course.
Yes.
And you recently shared on LinkedIn your achievement of receiving a significant award.
Yes.
After your 100th episode, I think it was.
Yeah.
And many people struggle with sharing their successes publicly out of fear of being perceived as bragging. How do you navigate that? And what advice would you give to others who feel the same way? Because I personally think celebrating your wins and your successes is so important.
Yeah. It's something that I find really hard. When it comes to social media and Instagram, I've only just started to put myself out there more. I very much hid behind my podcast and, you know, I've just put my face on my logo, so kind of made those changes. But I think for me, I've learned that when something means that much to me, so winning the Best Lifestyle Podcast at the Independent Podcast Awards, it meant so much to me that I think what really resonated when I did put it out there was more, I want other people to believe that it can happen, because I genuinely had no idea. And I never thought I'd win an award. I mean, listen, awards are awards. They're not the, they're not the be all and end all of life. But to know that somebody or a group of people have chosen you as a winner means the absolute world to me. And that, I just want to inspire people. And I think that's what it is for me. But I definitely do get that feeling of, am I always just putting on all these good things that are happening, and everyone just thinks, people can just think, oh, she's living this life where everything just always happens and it's always good. But I'm also feeling a shift in everything with the podcast. It was my 100th episode, then this happened, and like things are growing and building, and you want people to follow you on that journey, and you want people to see it. And I also think, I said this as well in my talk, is you've got to learn to PR yourself, because that is how the world works. The more, like talking about manifestation, the more you put out there that you are something, the more everybody else is then going to believe it. So I think for me, it is about just making sure that when you do get those wins, is celebrating them, whether I celebrate them just myself or I put them on social media. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm uncomfortable still doing it myself.
It's really hard.
I don't mind one-on-one, but publicly, it really sets you up, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't really do like Instagram stories and stuff, talking to camera. I know I need to do a lot of that more, but I did one very randomly a couple of weeks ago when I went to a hospital appointment on the wrong day. And I felt like I just needed to tell people that I'd done it. And I got so much more response from something like that, where people were like, oh my gosh, I've done the same thing. But I do, for me, like social media is just, it's so hard. And it's just one thing that I don't put as much time and effort in as I do with my podcast, because I just find it very overwhelming. But I've also realized you can't do everything. Like when you're a one-man band, you do have to prioritize things and figure out what's best.
I know you can see you on Apple Podcast, you're on Spotify, you're on, is it Acast?
Yes. Basically, once you release a podcast, I think a lot of people don't realize this, it goes everywhere. So wherever you get your podcast, you can always listen to Sliding Doors.
Oh, really? So you don't do anything to get it on all these other mediums?
So how it works with a podcast is that you are part of a podcast platform. So Acast is my platform. And then you upload your episodes each week, and then it gets distributed from that one upload to all the sites. You have to like register when you first start and tick that you want to go on them, but then it gets distributed everywhere. So it's actually a really clever way of how it gets done. And it's one of those things where I think until you've done it, it's a whole world that you don't even realize is there. Did
you use Acast from the beginning when you were doing your Zoom recordings?
No, I was on Podbean to start with, which was really good to start and kind of learn my craft. And then I moved to Acast about a year and a half ago.
Right. I'm wondering where, I'm going to post this on YouTube, and then I'm going to create shorts and reels, which I'll give you as well for your social. And I wasn't sure where, Spotify, but I don't know if there's requirements for Spotify. Is there like thresholds where you have to have so much of a following?
No.
So anyone can put anything out there, which is why you get bombarded when you search.
Exactly.
And you can't find anything unless you are very specific. I don't even know how their algorithm works for what comes up in the feed.
I mean, you can host on places like, I don't know if you can on Spotify, but you basically just need a hosting platform, and then it literally gets sent everywhere. But yes, that is the reason why podcasts are brilliant, because anyone can start one, but also really hard because it's such a saturated market, because anyone can do a podcast.
I heard that people are doing fewer podcasts now than they were 2 or 3 years ago.
Interesting.
But I don't know if it's a real statistic, because I just saw it on an Instagram reel.
I don't know. I just know that there are still so many out there, but there's not many that make it past 10 episodes. So that's always something good to keep in the back of your head, is that if you can get past that 10 and keep growing, then you're already halfway there.
Right. How long did it take you to get your first 1,000 followers? How many podcasts?
I remember when I released my first episode, it was the 1st of January in 2021. And I remember I didn't really understand how to look at the analytics. And then like 2 days later, I looked and 200 people had downloaded it. And I was like, 200 people? I was like, how do they know about it? Where? I just had no idea. But my most significant was when I hit 10,000 downloads, because I think for me, I can't remember when it was, but that to me, I just felt like, wow, my podcast isn't a massive podcast by any means, but it's growing and it grows organically. But for me, that was such a milestone to hit because it had been a figure that I'd just been looking at for so long. And, you can get very caught up and swept up in the downloads and the listens. But ultimately, if you are creating good content and you can build that community of people that keep coming back to listen, that's gold. So that's my aim is to kind of keep building that sliding doors community, but also making sure that everybody knows about it. So it's finding that fine balance between the two.
Do you engage with your listeners? Like when they comment or reply, do you engage with them and reply back?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. It means so much to me. Like I gave a talk on Saturday at a retreat about sliding doors and how I started the podcast, but also got people to think about their sliding doors moments. And literally to receive any message from anyone there, I've got a few over the past few days. It means so much to me. And because I've always been on the other side and known how much other people's stuff has meant to me. So I love engaging with my listeners. I'd love to do that more. I think building a community is something I definitely want to look at doing more next year. Because I think it's really important to...
So you're not on Instagram, or you are on Instagram?
Yes, I am on Instagram, yes.
So you do Instagram, do you do TikTok?
I don't do TikTok.
What else do you do? You're on Acast, Podbean?
LinkedIn, and social media-wise, I do LinkedIn and Instagram, and then everything else, I'm just on all the different podcast platforms, yeah.
Now, at what point do you start making money in your podcast? Not that money's a driver.
Yeah.
You obviously love what you do and are passionate about it.
It really depends. It does depend on how engaged your listeners are. It depends how big they grow. I have dynamic advertising now.
What is that? What's dynamic advertising?
So I have that through Acast. So dynamic advertising is that you'll see when you listen to an episode of Sliding Doors, there are 2 points that I put in, and I don't know who's going to advertise in them, but adverts will go in them. It's I think it's a 60-second for each segment, and then I make money from the adverts that go in there, which is amazing for me because it means that, you don't make the millions, but it starts to grow and it starts to kind of produce something towards your podcast, which is really good.
Yeah, it's like a passive income.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter when you posted it. If someone watches it and they listen to the adverts, you're getting a few cents every time.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Any other opposition you want to talk about that you had to overcome in the process? Any other real down spells or...
For the podcast or just in life?
Well, you could in life or in the podcast, what you might think is relevant and your sort of template of success for kind of getting through that.
Yeah, I would say, I had a really bad experience in my job, which I spoke about briefly before, where something that I thought was really amazing and going to be the best thing ever turned out not to be. And it was the first time that had ever happened to me where it changed my world. I just didn't expect it to happen. My mental health went bad, everything. And I think that really started, and heartbreak that you have. I think when certain things happen in your life that...
What was it that happened? It sounds like it was a heart-sinking moment.
Yeah, it just, the culture wasn't right for me. It just didn't work out that way for me, and I just realized that I had to leave, and even to make the decision to leave was really hard.
Was it a matter of you got in and it was a team? Because I've been there. I used to be a consultant in New York for many years, and I would take contracts for 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, or a year. And so I was always thrown into different teams, and sometimes that dynamic was amazing. And then you always have the odd one where either they don't like you, or you're not gelling, or they don't get you, or you're a threat, or whatever, and then it can create a toxic situation.
It basically was roughly something along that. I don't like to talk about it too much, but it was just very opposite to what I'd been used to, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Yeah. Especially because the dream ended up not working out, and then I had no job, and I was like, I've always had a job and I've always known where I've wanted to go. What do I do?
That must have required a lot of bravery to be like, wow, this is uncomfortable. I don't have another pool to jump into, but I got to get out of this pool or I'll drown.
Definitely. And quitting, I'd never done. I never quit anything before. And it taught me so much for later on in life, even when it came to the podcast with everything, because that situation worked out for the better. It was the best thing I ever did. I got a job that I never would have got if I hadn't have done that. and that turned out to like was a life-changing job, and I loved it. And I think with the podcast, there's been, as I say, for me, it's more the general stuff that is always a hard thing for me is getting guests on is so hard. And you can literally you can email 20 people and 19 people come back and say no, and one says maybe. And you just sit there and think, why am I doing this? And I'm on my own. I do everything by myself. So situations like that I'd had in the past make your skin just that slightly bit thicker. And I think for me, I'm so much better now with rejection than I was when I started the podcast. I think I've learned to redirect rejection into
possibility.
Yeah, rejection can be redirection. I think that's what I've learned, is that basically not to just stop doing something because what you want that minute isn't happening. And, you know, for me, I talk about this a lot, is that the podcast for me changed me as a person. I think I used to be somebody that my job was my everything. I thought all my happiness came from my job. And that's never going to happen. You know, you're never going to get all your happiness from your job. And things used to fester when I came home from work because I'd put too much care, and I was sensitive, and, you know, everything that I thought was just always about what's going on at work. And when I started the podcast, that all just stopped, because all of my passion and care and energy was going into something that I believed in, that I was in control of. But it actually made me better at work, because I wasn't coming home and overthinking situations. Work was work, and I put my all into it. But finding my passion and purpose meant that I had something that was mine, and it was in my control, and I got out what I put in, and it made me more confident. It made me happier at work. And I think for me, that was something else that really taught me, you know, starting the podcast and starting something on the side of your job is really important, because especially when you work for somebody else, you're always at the mercy of a company when you work for them. And it's so important to have something that you feel like is yours, whether that's a tennis lesson that you do every Saturday, and, you know, you go and do every time you feel a bit rubbish at work, you can go to that, and that's your safe, happy place that you kind of do stuff. That was what the podcast was for me. And I'm honestly a different person than I was 3.5 years ago. And there's been so many times along the way where if I hadn't have had my podcast to kind of keep me going, I probably would have crumbled. So yeah, I've gone a roundabout way of answering your question, but yeah, I think there's been lots of things that have happened, and I'm still learning, but I try and use those situations to help me moving forward.
What advice would you like to tell your 18-year-old self that could have possibly made a difference or allowed her to relax a little bit more in these sort of dips and slopes and highs and lows?
That's so hard. I think for me, it's more just have a bit more belief and confidence in yourself, and don't overthink what other people think about you. I think I really cared so much about what other people thought, and I think for me, it's just believing you're on the right path. And because good things, bad things happen, but I do have this belief that I'm where I'm meant to be. And I think I'd love to go back to that 18-year-old self and be like, you have such a drive for what you want to do. I know that with me, when I give 80%, a lot of the time that's other people's 100%, because that's just in me. I just have a work ethic and a drive to try and succeed in what I do. So yeah, I think that's probably what I'd tell my 18-year-old self.
What do you want your 80-year-old self to look back and say to you now?
Oh, that's another great question.
Or acknowledge you for?
Yeah, acknowledge me for like doing it on my own. You know, I'm 30, nearly 38. I'm still single, still want to get married, still want to have kids. And, you know, if I knew that in 5 years' time that would all happen, I'd be absolutely fine. But I think what I've learned is to live my life rather than waiting for things to happen and just living it. And I want to look back. I'd want to look back at this time and think, make the most of what you have now. Make the most of the fact that you have the freedom and flexibility that you do have. Make the most of the fact that you're trying to make your dreams come true, and think about the things that you have done to propel you to kind of keep going.
Did you create any of your own workshops yet where people come and pay you to like learn from you?
I'm trying to do that at the moment. So that's definitely an angle that I'm working on of sliding doors, because I think every person I meet is so intrigued by sliding doors and are like, they either say, oh, I've got so many sliding doors moments, or they say, I've never had one. And I say, you definitely have. You just don't know what a sliding doors moment is. Because I think sometimes we think that these moments have to be these big flashy things where I'm crossing the road and I bump into the love of my life because he saves me from a car running me over or something. It really isn't that. It can literally be as small as you say, you meet a friend for a coffee one day and then they meet someone the next day and find a guy for you. You know, such small things that can happen. So for me, I'm trying to bring people together more so that they can understand their sliding doors moments, so then they can embrace what's happened to them and then really think about their lives moving forward and make sure that they take opportunities and they make the right decisions and realize that sometimes there are no wrong decisions to make. You've just got to make a decision and commit to it. So yeah, I'm doing a lot more workshops and kind of work. It's called sliding doors sessions. So working with different groups of people and different companies to kind of bring people together in that workshop.
So is the workshop for people who want to identify their sliding doors moment and talk about it to propel them to do something, or is it people who want to start their own podcast?
It's both, to be honest. I think I've realised that loads of people do want to understand how I started sliding doors. And for me, you know, none of it is rocket science. It's all just my story and my journey. And I'm by no means a guru, and there are loads of people that do it. But I love to just tell my story because for me, it's changed my life. And, you know, I have hit some milestones this year, which have been really important to me. And it's both. I think it's getting people to understand the sliding doors theory, understand that theory of, you know, parallel lives and the multiverse, but also just kind of really just believing that there are many doors we can go through in life. And sometimes the analogy I always use is the destination might always be the same, but how you get there might be roadworks. You might have to turn left rather than turning right and work all the way around. It might just take you longer to get there, but you've got to believe that there's always somewhere that we're going towards. And that's kind of what keeps your faith and keeps you focused in life.
Do you have pressure at all to get an even bigger person to come on your podcast? When I say bigger, I just mean more known or more successful. Do you have that pressure at all? Or do you feel like, no, anyone who really is inspiring to me,
I give myself that pressure all the time. But because I want to have a great conversation, and I think for me, if there is someone bigger I want on the podcast, it's because I know that they've got a great story to tell. And I've learned along the way the types of guests that I want to have. And I think near the beginning, you want to grow your show. So you always want to get bigger names, but sometimes the bigger names don't even engage as well with your podcast or with your audience. So for me, it really is about just making sure that I'm talking to people that I'm interested to hear from as well, because you'll know, like, the best thing is to be curious. I want to go on a journey of curiosity with my listeners as well. So if I'm not interested in their journey, I don't think it would come across as authentically. But I love to have a variation of guests. Like, I just had someone on my podcast that I'd never even heard of until I interviewed her, and she's like massive and incredible lady, and I'm learning things about people that I'd never met before.
So who are the 3 most successful people in the world, famous or non-famous? You know, it could be the local fireman.
Yeah.
Who are the 3 most successful people who come to mind when you think of success?
Gosh.
Could even be family. I mean, I've heard people say to this question, my mom is successful. And, you know, success is defined, I think, infinitely. It's not just you know, money and fame.
I mean, my first one is one of my best friends, Kaz. And she always goes mad at me when I say this, but for me, like, she lives a successful life. She lived in London. We worked together at the British Fashion Council, and she ended up marrying one of her childhood sweethearts. They moved back to Harrogate. She's got 2 lovely boys who are just the nicest kids. She lights up a room every time she goes in it, but she also runs a successful consulting business. She is amazing at yoga and breath work and has her own studio now in her garden. And she just has ideas and does things and makes them happen. And so many times she doesn't think she's doing well enough or anything, but to me, like, she is success. She's happy, she's healthy, her family are, and she does these things that she loves doing, and she gives energy to people. So she's someone that I always look at when I'm looking at, like, success. Is that's what I'd like to be.
Successful living, for sure.
Successful in everything. I think another person I love is Fern Cotton, to throw a celeb in the mix, because I think, you know, what she's built with Happy Place is really inspirational to me. And I think that, you know, she's taken her love of interviewing people and talking about mental health and Happy Place and really built this incredible community of people. She puts on these festivals every year. And to see how all these people go and they engage and they're happy and they're all together and they're meeting people. Again, it's more what she's built and created that I think is so inspirational. And I think she's such a great person when it comes to looking at success. I think for me, when I look at successful people, it's more like the journey that they've been on personally and them feeling like they are content in life, living a life that feels authentic to them. They're not insecure in doing stuff that just doesn't relate to them and they're trying to please other people. I think for me, success is about growth and it's about authenticity, but I also think it's about successfully working on yourself and making sure that you're the best version of who you can be. And I'm always inspired by all of my friends and what they do. Lindsay Sterling, I don't know if you know Lindsay Sterling, she was on my podcast this week. She was who I just mentioned. She's massively successful in America. She's an electric violinist. And she basically went against the grain and like built this genre of music, and she tours around the world, has like millions and millions of followers, but she's living her best life while she does it. She creates the whole thing from start to finish, from the seed of a song to how the production looks on the tour.
Wow.
And she's fully in control of everything, but she's also built this lovely community. And to me, that's another version of success. She had a gut feeling that she wanted to do something different than the classical violin stuff that she did. And I love that she went against the grain and found her passion and then drove it forward. And that to me is exactly what I'm trying to do with Sliding Doors, is that's my passion. How can I drive that forward? So she's someone as well that I look at when I think about success.
Oh, nice. I'm going to look her up and listen to her.
Yes, it's a brilliant episode. She's amazing.
Well, Jennie Becker, thank you so much for coming on the Successful podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This has been so good. It's been nice to get to know you more and hear your story, hear about multiple occupations and how you're doing it with Sliding Doors. And I wish you continued success.
It's been so lovely in your brilliant studio and I've loved this chat. And yeah, just very excited to see where all your stuff goes as well. So thanks for having me.